Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to... Oh. Hold on a second. Sorry. Welcome to Prime Minister's Questions. Deputy Prime Minister's Questions. With Angela Rayner facing off against Conservative Alex Butchard. I think I've said his name right. Which will be... interesting to say the least. We are dual streaming live on youtube.com/Reganelite and on twitch.tv and on doing too many things at once and on twitch.tv/Reganelite1. We should be going live any moment, guys. I want to apologize because for some stupid reason UK Parliament are not showcasing the UK Parliament YouTube channel, which I normally stream off. They don't appear. I'll just refresh them again. Yeah, for some reason they're just not going to show it on their channel, which is very, very weird because they have shown Deputy Prime Ministers in the past, but for some reason they're not going to show it here. So that means I have to use someone else, which means I've got to use Sky News, which which I prefer not to, but that's the situation we're in. So. Let me just make necessary adjustments to this. Akis Mag, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Just adjust the volume. Should be starting any moment now. Mark Lacey, good to see you there. Hope you're doing well. And anybody else who may be lurking in either chats. Looks like the Twitch chat is working. So apparently I had needed to update the app. There, and of course, yes, I will be live streaming tonight with Snowflake Watch as well, just for reference as well for those who are wondering as well. So yes, I will have that there. Appears to be some real stuttering coming on my end. That's not a good sign. Hold on. It says excellent live stream, but I can definitely see the stuttering. That's not a good sign. Oh, damn. Oh. Jesus. I should do.
Agree that that's abhorrent. And while the Human Tissue Authority strictly regulates the public display of
Sorry, someone should have said earlier that I hadn't turned the audio on.
Human remains with fines or imprisonment for breaches, it does not cover sales or purchases. However, I will ensure that a meeting is made with the appropriate minister to discuss the troubling cases that she raises.
We now come to Alex Burkhart, the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Very happy to associate myself and this side of the House with the remarks the Right Honourable Lady made about Ukraine. Democracies must stand together. What is the government doing to bring down inflation?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think it's astonishing that, and first of all, can I welcome the right honourable member to his place? And many people might not know, Mr. Speaker, but the honourable member was the Minister for Growth when, under Liz Truss, inflation was 11.1% and growth flatlines, so we're doing much better than he did.
Well, the truth is that this, well, actually, thanks to the I'd like to thank the honourable lady for her standard charm. The truth is, this government isn't doing anything to bring down inflation. This government is stoking inflation. First, we had above-inflation pay rises for the unions. Then, we had a budget which the OBR said would increase inflation.
Order. Sorry. Right, I'm going to hear the question. I suggest we all hear it together, then our constituents can understand the answer as well as the question. Alice Burke.
Very kind, Mr. Speaker. First, we had above-inflation pay rises for the unions. Yep. Then we had a budget which the OBR said was going to push up inflation. Yep. This morning, we had city economists, real economists, Mr. Speaker, saying that next year inflation would hit 3%. Does the right honourable lady agree that this government's decisions mean higher inflation for working people?
There was going to be a hit in our higher inflation when this budget was announced. I think everyone knew that. But the thing is that what's the alternative? This is the thing. What is the alternative for what Labour are doing apart from taxing the rich? Is something that we all agree on. Here's the thing. So. And you can't take anything the Conservatives say seriously anyway, to be fair, because they're the ones who left us in this hellhole.
Mr. Speaker, I'll ask the honourable gentleman, 11.1% or 3%?
We've already talked about Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. It was Ukraine and COVID that drove up inflation. This government is doing it to the British people. High tax, high inflation, low growth, low reform. There's a word for that, Mr. Speaker. It's Starmerism.
Like inflation, whether it's high or low, yes, it does have an impact, but you guys left us in a cost of living crisis and never fixed it, okay? You guys brought us austerity. Like, you didn't do anything to fix that, okay?
Yesterday, like many honourable members on this side of the House, I spoke to farmers from across the United Kingdom. Yeah. Some of them families who farmed their land for centuries, elderly men in tears, children worried about their parents, all of them worried that their way of life is about to be destroyed. What would the right honourable lady like to say to them?
Before she answers this question, I want to make a very serious point about now, I've been very much on the fence about this because I haven't really had the discussion about it, and I'm going to talk more about this tonight. But what I will say is that there was a farmer talking to LBC, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he said that he was going to a funeral of a fellow farmer friend of his who had taken his own life as a direct result of this decision by the government over inheritance tax. Now, whether the story is true or not, I don't know. He's claimed that others have taken their lives too. I have not seen these stories in the mainstream media, but whether or not, but it is obviously very serious and very worrisome that farmers are deeply scared and deeply frustrated. There is a side of this story, rightfully so, about those who are taking advantage of the system in place to enrich themselves at the expense of being a farmer as well. So there are two sides to this story. I do think the way the government has approached this has been poor. However, there is a part of me that also understands that British farmers need to pay a bit more as well. But there is no there isn't a perfect solution to this scenario, unfortunately. But we know the government are just going to sit on their bottom line. There is a chance that perhaps the Chancellor may change this down the road, possibly, if there's enough pressure applied from farmers' unions.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, we are absolutely committed to our British farmers, and that's why we've committed £5 billion to the farming budget over the next 2 years. That's the largest ever amount for sustainable food production in the UK. And it's alongside £60 million, Mr. Speaker, to support those affected by extreme wet weather, and over £200 million to tackle disease outbreaks. His party couldn't even get the money out the door for farmers, failing to spend over £300 million on farming budgets. The farmers know they ruined it for them, and that's why we're in government and they're not.
Well, perhaps the right honourable lady thinks that everyone came to London yesterday to thank the government. Let's look at the facts. A typical mid-sized 360-acre family farm in the constituency of my right honourable friend for Thirsk and Moulton. They've spoken to their accountant. Their new liability because of this government is £500,000. That's 12 years' worth of profit. When this generation passes away, that farm will become totally unviable, and it's just one of thousands and thousands of similar farms. It's clear the government hasn't got its facts right. The Central Association for Agricultural Valuers, the real experts in this field, say so. The NFU says so. They're shortly to publish a report showing that 75% of all commercial farms will fall above the threshold. If the government isn't going to reverse this terrible policy, will the right honourable lady at least commit that there will be no further increases to inheritance tax and no further reductions to agricultural property relief or business property relief in this Parliament?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he talks about the facts, and I absolutely stand by the figures the government has set out. And the vast majority of estate owners will be totally unaffected. He wants to talk about the figures, Mr. Speaker. I will be crystal clear. The vast majority of estate owners will see no change and pay no tax on land passed on valued at £1 million. Couples can pass on £3 million, Mr. Speaker, tax-free, and those above the thresholds will pay only half the normal rate and can pay over 10 years interest-free.
Now, according to most, one or two of the experts that I've seen, this will not affect most farmers, but obviously the National Farmers Union and others that he has brought up, they are saying different. So there are some who are saying that it is not going to affect farmers, and there are others who are saying it is. So there is a catch-22 on this. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, and I'll probably dive a bit more deeper into this tonight because we will talk about it tonight. But I do think that some farmers are going to face the brunt of this. But I just want to point out something Mad Monk says here, which is I think is really important. Thanks, good to see you, Mad Monk. There, he says, I don't think the farmers know that if they had assets worth less than 3.5 million, that they wouldn't pay inheritance tax. That I agree. I think there's a lot of farmers who are not paying attention to the actual numbers and just think that they just assume that every farmer is going to have to take inheritance tax. That's not what it is. But they're all jumping on the assumption that they're all going to get it. And I'm pretty sure not every single British farmer has land has it worth over 3.5 million. I'm pretty sure it's not. I wouldn't trust the NFU as they were the only ones telling farmers to vote for Brexit. Telling them would be beneficial to farmers to see how that's worked out. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another gripe I do have with British farmers is that they voted for Brexit and they're worse off as a result of it as well.
This is just another part of the budget that's unravelling, Mr. Speaker. Everyone here and all the farmers at home will have heard there was no guarantee there. We know what that means. They're coming back for more. And even if the Honourable Lady had made a promise today, it wouldn't have been worth a fig. We know that the Environment Secretary, before the election, promised the farmers this wouldn't happen. Labour promises get broken. Let's put all of this into context. The Treasury The Treasury says the family farms tax will raise, on average, £441 million a year. The Treasury also says that the public sector pay rises the government announced in July will cost £9.4 billion a year. That's over 21 times as much. Why does the government think that above-inflation pay rises for the trade unions are worth so...
Order! 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 Now then, I don't need any more from the second bench. Can I just say, please, less of it. We've had a bit of a run-in recently and I don't need to have any more. Right. Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's an audacity for the honourable gentleman to stand there and suggest in some way that Labour broke promises or raised taxes. When I'll school the honourable gentleman, it was his government that raised taxes to the highest level for a generation. It was his government. It was his government.
Sorry? We'll have less as well, unless you want to go and have a cup of tea. Have we heard any more? Is that it now? Yes or no? Absolutely. You're the one that was mouthing. Well,
Are you talking to me? Yes, I'm talking to you. Oh, my God.
Sorry, you must be able to do it like a ventriloquist dummy. Prime Minister.
It was his government that crashed the economy, that saw inflation rise to 1.1% and growth flatline. It was his government that spent the reserves 3 times over. I'll take no lessons from the honourable gentleman.
Alex Burkhardt.
This is the thing. They can't say shit, the Conservatives. They can't say shit. But I do think when Daisy Cooper steps up, it will be a very interesting questions from her.
I understand why the Right Honourable Lady doesn't want to answer questions about the terrible choices the government have made. Yeah. It's because the truth is ugly. The truth is that this is a punishment meted out to people who don't vote Labour. It's the same punishment meted out to parents who send their children to private schools. It's the same punishment meted out to the owners of small businesses terrified about national insurance contributions. And it's the same punishment meted out to pensioners who can't afford to pay their fuel this winter.
Not all small businesses are going to suffer as a direct result, mate. And as for private schools, well, you know, the state schools kind of need the funding. So, I mean, obviously, there's no guarantee that the money raised from private VAT, 20% raise in VAT to private schools is going to go into state education. But state education and a guaranteed education for all children is better than just for the few.
Isn't it the truth, Mr. Speaker, that if you don't vote Labour, they don't care about you?
There will be more. There will be more. And it won't be what you want more of. Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, after that display, he clearly didn't recognise the result of the general election. And has learnt nothing. While this government has been fixing the mess that they left, Conservatives have been desperately trying to rewrite history. They come here every week jumping on a new bandwagon, taking a new pot shot, but absolutely no word on what they'll do differently. Last week, the Leader of the Opposition admitted she supported Labour's plans to invest in NHS, schools and homes. But what they want is all the benefits of the budget, Mr. Speaker, but have no idea how they'll pay for it. Mr. Speaker, the faces may change, but it's the same old Tory party. Straight back to putting everything on their credit card, spending their reserves 3 times over. We took the difficult decisions to fix the £22 billion black hole that they left behind. And while they're reinventing the past, we're investing in the future.
Get your words out, Angela.
Andy MacDonald. MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a new report, Human Rights Watch have set out irrefutably how Israeli authorities are committing the war crimes of forcible transfer in Gaza, which amounts to crimes against humanity. Israel's evacuation system fails to ensure civilian safety. Civilians are not provided with access to health, nutrition and shelter, compounded by the banning of UNRWA with much of Gaza now uninhabitable.
They don't care, Labour, and neither does the Conservatives. They don't care. If they did, they would have called out Netanyahu and his government already. All they can say is, I'm gonna predict the future, and I'm gonna say, Angela Rayner is gonna say, we're very concerned by these reports. We're very concerned by these reports, and we will speak to those from the Israeli government to find out about these as much as we possibly can. No condemnation. You will not hear condemnation from Angela Rayner. If it did, I will be shocked.
Will the government acknowledge that Israel has carried out mass forced displacement in Gaza, and will it take concrete measures on arms trade and Israeli officials in order to comply with its duty to prevent genocide and protect Palestinian lives?
Hi, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The situation in the Middle East is catastrophic, and I know the whole House is horrified at the terrible loss of civilian life. We are calling at every opportunity for an immediate ceasefire with the release of the hostages and more aid into Gaza. But we do urge Israel to ensure that UNRWA can continue its life-saving work, something the Foreign Secretary has discussed directly with the Israeli Foreign Minister. And we've imposed sanctions in response to appalling incidents of settler violence and suspended export licences for arms following a review that found a clear risk that they may be used to commit or facilitate violations of international law. And we will continue to seek to a two-state solution with a secure Israel, Mr. Speaker, alongside a viable and sovereign Palestine.
Well, that's not happening because right now they're locking up northern Gaza, and they're already looking to settle with it. They're pushing people out of northern Gaza, and they're pushing their own people in, and they're being told you're not allowed back in. It's now our land. They're literally annexing northern Gaza. They're literally going to annex it, and they're going to take the territory. They're literally doing that.
Come to Daisy Cooper, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I associate myself and the Liberal Democrats with the Deputy Prime Minister's remarks on Ukraine? Ahead of the budget, I warned the Deputy Prime Minister that increasing national insurance contributions on social care providers would make the crisis in social care worse. Now, OBR figures suggest that the increase in NICs will cost more to social care providers than the money that the government has announced for that sector in the budget, meaning that that measure alone could withdraw £200 million out of the sector. Will the Deputy Prime Minister speak with the Chancellor to make sure that, at the very least, health and care providers are protected from taking the hit?
Well, I thank the honourable member for that question, and the Chancellor is sat near me, and I know that through those discussions that we had, that we wanted to ensure that we protected social care. That's why we confirmed £600 million of new grant funding for social care next year, Mr. Speaker, an uplift to local government spending, and an £86 million increase to the Disabled Facilities Grant. Our Employment Rights Bill will help deliver the first ever fair pay agreement for social care sector as well, and we'll also make sure that the NHS is funded to help with the social care situation as well.
Did she answer that question? I don't think she entirely did.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's clear that the social care providers will be worse off, so I do urge the Deputy Prime Minister and the Chancellor to look again at that. Somebody else who was very worried about the budget is Cathy. Cathy is a farmer in my constituency of St Albans, and she told me yesterday that she thinks the government changes simply do not make sense. The changes mean that her family may have to pay a bill which will force them to sell land, which makes food production unviable. At the same time, the government has not closed the land-buying tax loophole that can be exploited by equity firms and the super wealthy. Farmers told me yesterday that they feel like they were betrayed by the Conservatives, and they now feel they were betrayed by the Conservatives.
You heard her.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Farmers told me yesterday that they feel as though they have been betrayed by the Conservatives, but they now feel like they have also been lied to by Labour. Will the Deputy Prime Minister think again on this measure so that our farmers can feed Britain?
That's a very good point there about the equity in land there. That's very, very concerning, because there is going to be a case that farmers are going to, some farmers who do not want to pay that inheritance tax are going to have to sell some land. And obviously it means that it's going to be less budget. And obviously that land is then going to be taken swooping up, as she said, by the billionaires and the super rich. Hence why we need I was going to swear, but I'll go reserve it. A land tax. We need a land tax, because if there's one thing that billionaires and asset owners can't do is move land. We need to tax the land that we own. Don't know why it's so sad today.
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to hear that Cathy is distressed by what I would say is scaremongering around what the Labour Party is doing. The budget delivered £5 billion for farming over the next 2 years, a record amount. The last government failed to spend £300 million on farmers, and our plan is sensible, fair and proportionate, and protects the smaller estates while fixing public services that they rely on.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are only 7 places in England, according to the House Library, where school funding per pupil is lower than my constituency of Aldershot and Farnborough. Does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that something has gone badly wrong when teachers are being forced to pay out of their own pocket for basic school supplies, and so many others have left the profession in droves over the past 14 years?
14 years.
Will ministers work with me to tackle the root of this problem so that we can give every young person in my constituency and beyond the very best start in life?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And every child deserves the opportunity to succeed in school and beyond. And I'm sorry to hear of the experience in her constituency. Last week I visited Raisingfield Primary School in my constituency, whose school council had a lot to say about the resources to our schools, and we have increased the core schools budget by £2.3 billion next year, increasing per pupil funding in real terms. And as her constituency, home of the British Army, I know she will also welcome the expansion of childcare support to service families deployed overseas, saving families around £3,400 a year. And I'm happy to ensure she gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Anderson.
Why?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few weeks ago, from that dispatch box, the Minister for Rural Affairs said that he'd been congratulated by a farmer over the introduction of the inheritance tax. Now, I think this farmer must have been a cannabis farmer, because just yesterday we had 10,000 farmers on Whitehall protesting against this madcap decision. So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that this decision should be thrown in the trash can along with Rachel from Accounts' CV?
Why was he allowed to speak?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he talks about CVs. It's good to see the honourable member doing well on his bench. Once a Labour councillor, then a Tory MP, and now a Reform Chief Whip. Every time he switches party, he gets a promotion. Mr. Speaker, I've already outlined what we've done to support our farmers, and we'll continue to support the farmers, and we'll continue to invest in our public services to get Britain back on track.
Graham Stringer.
My right honourable friend has come under intense scrutiny from the press at different times. She must have found it very difficult. A press free to scrutinise politicians is absolutely vital in a free society and a democracy. Is she as concerned as I am about the Stasi-like interview that was given to Alison Pearson, the Daily Telegraph journalist, a week last Sunday? And does she agree with me that the Essex Police Force and other police forces would be better trying to deal with shoplifting, burglaries and other crimes rather than intimidating journalists?
Yeah, I recall the story. I do recall the story.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And also, it is incredibly important around free speech and our press. It's part of our democracy. But it's also in direct response to his question. Of course, police are independent. and it's a live investigation, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on that. But I do believe that we should have a free press. It's part of our democracy, and we should have free speech. But with that comes responsibility of those that do it.
So keep that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I met with 3 constituents in Parliament, Duncan Hawley, his wife Nicola, and his 10-year-old daughter Hattie. Duncan is a sheep farmer, and he stewarded his family farm for most of his life. He's outraged and hurt and worried about the government's deeply damaging family farm tax. And he's deeply worried about food security, food inflation, and whether we'll even be able to pass that farm on to future generations. So my question to the Deputy Prime Minister is very simple. Why has this Labour government declared war on British farmers?
I haven't read the read the print.
Well, I say to the honourable member and to Duncan and Nicola that this government hasn't declared war on farmers. The vast majority of farms will not pay any inheritance tax, and we have protected them. We have been as generous as we can, and the farmers rely on our public services like everybody else. We inherited a £22 billion black hole from the Conservatives, who spent reserves 3 times over. We are investing in our schools, our hospitals, our public services and housing. And if the honourable gentleman wants to suggest what he would do differently, if he doesn't agree with that, like the Leader of the Opposition, then he should say so.
Got time over.
This is the one thing that the Conservatives do. They cry foul wolf, but they don't offer solutions. This is the one thing that I don't hear enough of. Like when you say you're against a policy the government are doing, offer an alternative. Offer an alternative. Don't just stand up and condemn it. Offer an alternative instead. Makes you look a lot smarter than just somebody who's just playing to the themes of, oh, this is a terrible thing. Okay, what's your alternative then? No, this is a terrible thing. What would you do instead then? Oh, it's a terrible thing. That's all you keep hearing. Like if you're going to condemn something, at least give an alternative to it. I mean, literally, like I'm sure you guys have seen the clip of Jeremy Clarkson. He was dumbfounded and got literally owned by Victoria Derbyshire of the BBC. I'm sure you guys have seen the clip running around, and we'll probably play that clip tonight, maybe. But you've got to be able to have a solution. You can't just literally just condemn it and say, well, what else would you do? What would you do instead?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous government failed countless women through chronic underfunding of maternity services. At Stroud Maternity Hospital, postnatal beds have remained closed for over 2 years. Local midwife-led units like Stroud deliver fantastic quality of care for women whilst having really low intervention rates during birth. Can the Deputy Prime Minister outline what steps this government will take to improve maternity services?
Yes. Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. I'm sorry to hear about the situation in Stroud, and I thank him for raising this important issue for women in his constituency. The Darcy report clearly set out that under the previous government, the NHS was broken, with patients waiting too long for care. We're committed to ensuring that all women and babies receive safe, compassionate and personalised care through pregnancy, birth and, critically, following those months ahead. We will ensure maternity services deliver the best outcomes for patients as we invest to build an NHS fit for the future.
Isabel Roberts.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Yfarydd. Now, I know how much professional care work means to the Deputy Prime Minister. Cariad care homes in Porthmadog tell me they won't be able to absorb the additional exorbitant costs imposed by her government's budget. They tell me they believe this poses a threat worse than COVID to their business. Wow. Will she personally intervene, therefore, so that her government at least makes care providers exempt from the rise in employers' national insurance contributions?
Yeah. Well, she's absolutely right to say that I absolutely value the work of care providers and carers across the whole of the UK, and that's why we've put additional funding in through the budget as well. And we've also been making sure that care providers and those that work in the charities, including hospices, amongst the tax regime provides the most generous amongst in the world, Mr. Speaker. This includes tax release for charities and their donors worth over £6 £6 billion for the tax year of April 2024. We put record funding into our NHS. We've increased funding into adult social care and children's social care, and we'll continue to support our public services that were left on their knees by the last government.
Still doesn't change the fact that many people out there are going to suffer as a direct result of these national insurance rises. And it seems to... The question is just literally fallen on deaf ears. Yes, you've done your investment, but when is it going to pay off? When are people going to feel that they are better off? And the impression that people have is that people are going to be worse off before they are better off. That things will get worse, and are they even going to get better? And that is the feeling that many people have when they are reporting to their MPs, and questions like that obviously raise, without a shadow of a doubt, raises questions about Labour and their budget. Whatever Labour were going to do, they were always going to get a hit with a hammer here. The question is is this all going to benefit us later on down the road? And at the moment, there seems to be a great deal of frustration and anger with Labour, but they have several years to right the wrongs of this, to show us all that what they're doing now is right, but they have to show it. People have to. It's not just a case about bringing deficits down, getting the finances sorted. People need to feel that they're better off. People need to feel that the money in their pockets. People need to feel that their livelihoods are better. If they don't feel that in the next couple of years, they will angrily vote out this Labour government.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago today, the Chancellor announced a historic £22.6 billion investment into the NHS because it is our duty to rescue this country's health service after 14 years, sadly, of mismanagement, underinvestment, and unfortunately also misleading announcements from the party opposite. In Plymouth, Derriford Hospital, where I represent, serves not just my constituency, but 19 constituencies across the South West. It is the only major trauma centre for adults in the South West. However, we have really suffered from those decisions from the Conservatives. Can the Deputy Prime Minister outline how that historic investment is going to make its way to Plymouth?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for being such a champion for Plymouth, and as he knows, we're providing £25 billion extra over the next 2 years from the Department for Health and Social Care, including the largest capital budget in real terms since 2010, and we'll make sure that every corner of the UK can see the generosity and how that will improve services for them. And I'll make sure he gets a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss in detail how Plymouth will be able to capitalise off that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The town of Cheshunt in my constituency of Broxbourne has no banks or building societies. We've been told we're not eligible for a banking hub.
What?
We've been told we're not eligible for a banking hub. Does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that every town that wants a banking hub should be eligible for one so that my residents can have access to their hard-earned cash?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've committed to 350 banking hubs through this Parliament, and I'm sure the Minister will be happy to meet with him on that point. But I'm also hopeful that he also will be thankful of the Levelling Up Fund Round 2 money that we secured, with £14.3 million going to Waltham Cross Resistance Project, regenerating the town centre for his constituents.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know better than most that under the last Tory government, neighbourhood policing was stripped away, leaving the police invisible in towns like those I represent in Pendle and Clitheroe. As a former police inspector, I'm delighted that the new Labour government has committed to rebuild neighbourhood policing. Can the Deputy Prime Minister assure my constituents that Labour's neighbourhood policing guarantee will soon ensure that every town has a dedicated neighbourhood team?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his expertise in this area and for the work that he did previous to coming to this place. Tory austerity has decimated neighbourhood policing, and we'll put thousands more neighbourhood police and PCSOs back on our streets to ensure every community has a named local officer, and we'll tackle illegal drugs, half-night crime, crack down on antisocial behaviour and go after the gangs who lure young people into violence.
Dr. Andrew Meredith.
I will just say, obviously, you know, I remember when we had community policing, and it was a very nice thing, and it gave. I remember seeing a lot of it, and I remember hearing a lot of it, and it gave people that assurances and that security about their safety, and that was eroded. That was slowly eroded over the 14 years of Conservative rule. I definitely remember that happening, and it was such a shame for it to have been eroded by the Conservatives the way they have done. So I do hope that they do bring it back, and I do hope that we start seeing more bobs on the street, because I do think it you know, the presence of police officers, not just in just them being there, acts as a deterrent for any crimes in the first place. It will stop people. It will make people think twice. The moment when they see a police officer, everyone acts. You know, people, those criminals and whatnot, they stop. They don't do anything, because obviously the police officer or a PCSO there is right there in front of them. They're not going to do anything. So it does make a difference to see them. But yeah, it's very scary when you have some towns and some neighborhoods and villages that literally have no police officers whatsoever, like literally have no police cars or anything, or even in the rural areas. Like, it really does matter to have police officers around. It really, really does. And obviously, I do hope that Labour does push this through over the next few years.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Scottish and Welsh governments have banned the construction of new waste incinerators because of health and pollution concerns. The last government paused them and committed to banning them. Why then is this government busy approving them?
Well, Mr. Speaker, planning, as the honourable gentleman knows, we always follow the strict rules in regard to that, making sure that safety and other factors are always taken into consideration, and will continue to do so.
Yuan Yang.
Would have liked a bit more to that question, if I'm honest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of families in my constituency of Burley and Woodley have moved into new build developments in Shinfield, in Loddon Park and beyond. But many have found their dreams of home ownership punctured by unfair and opaque property management charges. Can the Deputy Prime Minister reassure my constituents by setting out how the Leasehold Reform Bill will address these concerns? And would she like to meet with me and affected constituents?
Well, I welcome my honourable friend to her place. Unjustified increases in service charges are completely unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. The Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act will provide homeowners with greater rights, powers and protections over their homes, and that includes greater transparency over service charges. For too long, leaseholders have been ripped off. It's this government that will sort it out.
Fan of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
Today is Red Wednesday, in which we remember all those persecuted for their belief worldwide. A recent report by Aid to the Church in Need shows that in the countries surveyed, persecution of minorities has increased by 60%. In the light of this, will the government commit to reappointing the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief, a post that has remained vacant since July, and do that as soon as possible, hopefully by Christmas, so that we in the United Kingdom can play our part in defending religious and belief minorities worldwide?
I don't know what the reason why the appointment is, but I'm pretty sure the position is that myself, I'm sure, and everybody else here will, you know, stand for equalities and stand for everybody's beliefs in doing so. I don't see the reason why Labour can't have an appointee to it, but let's just hear the answer.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. We are committed to champion human rights, including the right to freedom of religion or belief. I join the right honourable member in marking Red Wednesday, an important moment to show support for all those persecuted around the world for their religion or belief. And today we will light up the FCDO buildings in the UK in red in support of that, Mr. Speaker. Envoy roles are under consideration, will be decided upon in due course.
So that's a probable no. But obviously, I think she said what needs to be said about, standing up for human rights. But it's also a bit difficult saying that when Keir Starmer met the President Xi, while also at the same time 46 Hong Kong nationalists who were fighting for their democratic freedoms in the city of Hong Kong were sentenced literally, I think it was yesterday. So yeah, bit hard to stand up when you're not standing up there. Oh, are you guys standing up for Palestinian rights as well? Human Rights Watch is there. We've forgotten about that. Yeah. Oh yeah. We stand up for all human rights. Does that include Palestinians? I guess it doesn't, guys. I guess it doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Harshita Brella was killed and found in the boot of her car as it was taken from her home in Corby on the 14th of November. This tragic murder left the community shocked and scared and is being investigated by the police. Harshita was protected by a domestic violence order that lasted 28 days. It was not renewed. Would the Deputy Prime Minister agree that all must be done to reassure the community and to bring the perpetrator to justice? And would she further agree that in some circumstances, domestic abuse orders should last longer than 28 days when the victims are most vulnerable?
Yes.
I thank my honourable friend for raising this case, Mr. Speaker. Hajita's family, my thoughts are with her family in this horrifying set of circumstances where Hajita should have been protected and felt protected. This government is committed to halving violence against women and girls, Mr. Speaker, and we continue to do our work, hopefully across this House, to make sure that we can end circumstances where Hajita faced and we can stop this kind of barbaric action.
Lincoln Jack.
I do think that the fact that 28 days and it was not renewed. Obviously, we don't know the circumstances of the case, and obviously it's under police investigation, but it does obviously raise questions about whether or not those should be detained longer. Perhaps in doing so, it should be something that be worth considering in the future. Perhaps in extreme cases, maybe so. But my heart goes out to the friends and family of her, and anyone who goes through that. Absolutely horrifying.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Spelthorne Litter Pickers are an outstanding organisation of 1,000 volunteers who do great work up and down my constituency, come rain or shine. And last week, they were awarded the King's Award for Voluntary Service. Would the Deputy Prime Minister, the Government, indeed the whole House, like to join me in congratulating the Spelthorne Litter Pickers and to thank them for all that they do?
Mr. Speaker, what can I say? I absolutely agree with the Honourable, may I say, my honourable friend, in terms of the Spelthorne Litter Pickers, and say what an important role across all of our constituencies where local communities come together and volunteers help. In particular, young people as well do a lot of this in our constituencies, Mr. Speaker. So I think across the whole House we congratulate them on their award and those that do the voluntary work and support our community.
I will just say this about litter picking, because I really, this is a gripe that I have, especially in this constituency where I am. We have some really terrible people. There's an alleyway just up the pathway from where I live, and there's a lot of fly tippers that will literally dump stuff in the middle of the night down that alleyway, and then when you get up in the morning, you walk down that alleyway, it is full of crap. And then the council has to come along and clean it up. And there are times when I walk around sometimes in my area where there's literally a woodland path just very close nearby to where I am. And it is so full of crap and rubbish when there's literally a bin there. For me, like I'm delighted that people do volunteer litter picking and whatnot, but we also have a part of society where both from an educational point of view and parenting point of view, they are not teaching children the importance of putting their rubbish in the fucking bin. And it's something that really infuriates me, and it's a habit that some people in England have, this habit of not bothering to literally walk to a bin or literally hold their rubbish to put it in a bin rather than just dump it on the floor. It's something that absolutely infuriates me. It should not be a case that people should have to volunteer to clear litter picking. It should be something that shouldn't need to happen, because everyone should know that if you have rubbish, you put it in the bin. If it's recycled, if there are different recycling, then you put them in the plastic area or the glass or whatever bin caveat you're supposed to be. It's not rocket science. For me, it's a failure of parents not teaching their kids the value and importance of teaching them of putting rubbish in the bins. And it may also be an argument case of that maybe there's not enough bins around, potentially as well. That might be another argument. But whether there is enough bins around or not, still should not give anyone the right to dump litter. And I hate seeing it. You know, in comparison to when I go to some parts of here in the country, here in England, that I've been to, are much better than others. But even when I've been to European countries in my time, of how clean that they are, and they always make sure that they clear their rubbish. It's a very bog standard thing, and yet for some reason we have trouble doing this in our country. It just shows how pathetic some people really are in England. They really are. And it is a very simple, basic thing to do. It shouldn't be the fact that there's many volunteers who have to do litter picking infuriates me, because they should not need to do it, because people should know that their rubbish is supposed to go in the bin. It's something that really does boils my blood sometimes when I think about it. But I will say, obviously, you know, credit to those who do it. But they shouldn't have to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the House's attention to my register of interest as a very proud trade union member. In 2019, the party opposite promised to deliver an employment bill that would protect and enhance workers' rights in the UK, and like so many of their promises, they never delivered. But my right honourable friend has done it, cleaning up the mess that the party opposite left behind. So would the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that her employment rights bill is the biggest upgrade to workers in a generation?
Is that all it is?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And declaring an interest, me and my right honourable friend used to be conveners for Unison North West as well, and I champion the work that she's done on behalf of her constituents and for working people of this country. The government is delivering on its plan to make work pay and to ensure that employment rights are fit for a modern economy. And the Employment Rights Bill will benefit people in some of the most deprived areas of the country and will save them up to £600 per year in lost income from hidden costs of insecure work. So I commend the work that many honourable members, some across the House and in particular on our benches, that have brought this bill to fruition.
Reb Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House recognises the authenticity of the Right Honourable Lady's backstory, her pride in being a carer, and indeed in her recent elevation. By contrast, in June, the Chief Constable of Northamptonshire was sacked for misrepresenting his CV. And just last month, Tanya Nasri, the nurse, was imprisoned for 5 years for doing the same. Does the Right Honourable Lady agree with me that such serious consequences are right and just in such cases?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I would say to the honourable gentleman, I know where he's trying to go with this, while it's tempting, what I would say to the honourable gentleman is, sorry, the right honourable gentleman, I do apologise. What I would say to the right honourable gentleman is our Chancellor in the last 4 months has shown more competence than the last 4 Chancellors that he had.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My home city of Edinburgh
despite being Scotland's capital, is the lowest funded per head local authority in Scotland due to austerity inflicted on us.
Oh, let me guess. Blame the SNP. It's the SNP's fault. Blame the SNP. Not blaming the Conservatives at all, guys.
By the SNP and that means great projects like the Ripple face closure. Now that my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Scotland, has secured the biggest block grant to Scotland in the history of the Scottish Parliament, will the Deputy Prime Minister work with me to ensure the Scottish Government uses that to end austerity for my constituents?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. He's entirely right to raise the impact of SNP's irresponsible management of Scotland's finances and the austerity that they're inflicting on his constituents. Our budget rejected a return to austerity, and we delivered the largest funding settlement for Scotland in real terms since devolution. The result of the budget is clear, Mr Speaker. The SNP have the powers, they have the money, they have no more excuses.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I was contacted last week by a constituent whose husband has stage 4 bowel cancer. He had a routine scan in June but didn't receive the results until early November. And unfortunately, within that period, he received unsuitable chemotherapy and his cancer has progressed. Given that Shropshire has the worst record in the country for CT and MRI scan results, can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister the same question that my constituent has asked me? When is the government going to address this problem?
Well, I'm sincerely sorry to hear about your constituent's husband and the terrible diagnosis at stage 4 and the delays in that. We've set out before how difficult the inheritance was in terms of the cancer diagnosis waiting list. People are waiting far too long for treatment. It's why the Chancellor put record money and funding into our NHS so that we can catch cancer on time. And I know that the Health Secretary is determined to do this, and it's a personal endeavour to him to make sure that people are not having to wait and don't end up in the circumstances that are so tragic for your constituent.
Just for the record, I'd like to apologise to Mr Kruger. I got the wrong person. Mr Wilder's now owned up to it. What I would say is don't...
Are you serious?
What I would say to the honourable member is, don't sit next to him again. Right, that completes Prime Minister's question.
No, was that it? Oh my God. No worries, Bernie. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. It's probably Alistair Keir, most likely, who gifted your membership. Well, we just come to the end of Prime Minister's question. So, obviously, that deputy, that was an interesting one. I thought Alex was a bit of a bell end, if I'm honest, when it comes to some of his questions. A lot of sort of thing from him. Like I said, I'm going to talk more. We'll spend more time talking about the farming issue tonight, guys, on the Snowflake Watch, because that is going to be the topic of discussion. I'm pretty sure, unless something big comes in. That will be the subject of discussion tonight. As for some of the questions, obviously, someone had to take a swipe at the SNP because the SNP didn't get a chance to speak. Why was Lee Anderson wasted his time with his question? I thought some of the... I hate questions where they basically say... where they try to big up certain things. It was interesting, obviously, like I said, the litter picking one did really kind of stick to me because I know in my area that, as like I said, littering is an issue and it drives me insane for me. But I thought Angela Rayner kind of handled herself pretty well, solidly with most questions. I don't think there was a point where she was flustered or any way, shape or form. I thought she conducted herself all right. But there are criticisms absolutely of I even thought you kind of knew the lines of where she would go when it came to the question about what's happening in the West Bank and Gaza and whatnot. And you knew that they weren't going to condemn what's going on over there. And in the same session, she as responding to the father of the house question, she literally says about standing up for human rights. And it's literally like, you can't, like, in one breath, you saying you're standing up for human rights, but in another breath, you won't call out Israel for the human rights abuses that they're doing at the hands of Palestinians. So, yeah. Just wanted to put that in there as well, guys. But let me know what you guys thought of Deputy Prime Minister's questions down in the comment section below, guys. I will be back this tonight with the Snowflake Watch at 8 p.m. Thank you guys all for coming along today. I really appreciate you guys giving your time to watch. Thank you guys for all your comments. Enjoy the rest of your days, whatever you guys are doing. I have some content to record for you guys for the next couple of days as well. Just a reminder before you head out that there is also content available on the Rumble and Patreon. Links for both of them are down below. If you want to check out the content on them, it is greatly appreciated as well. And also you can find links to all my social medias as well as the Discord community, which is free to join. Links for all of them are down below. So yes. And just before I go, I have one last thing to say. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. It'd be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media so others are notified of this live stream. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.